goddess. She was also called Veriteka, or Great of Magic.
Yes.
And in the experience, it was very beautiful. I spent a lot of hours in being God, and I felt that everything is in God. And
Yes.
since there are no boundaries between the one and the other, there's really no experience of space or time. Um,
Well, there's
and
no
then and then there,
experience at all of the one. The experience happens when it is all that is, the portion of the one that actually does know itself as all that is. But in the one itself, there's no experience of anything.
yes, and then so you've explained that when God expresses himself, like when the one becomes multiple, it's immediately from one to three. Um, because when God becomes manifest, there's also the transition period or the boundary line between the two.
Yes.
So my impression was that Sekhmet is actually in this space, that she is able to balance these multiple dimensions, reaching into both of them at the same time. And that brings me to my first question: how would you describe Sekhmet? What does she represent, and in what dimension does she exist?
Sekhmet is an archetypal energy, a level of consciousness within all that is representative of certain concepts on your planet, certain concepts within the collective consciousness of your planet, but expressed through a particular culture called Egyptian awareness. Sekhmet is the idea, to some degree, of what you typically refer to as magic, or what Sekhmet would particularly perceive as shapeshifting from one reality to another, as many of the Egyptian archetypal symbolic gods were representative of. And thus, Sekhmet allows for a fluidity of change, a magical kind of representation that can also extend into different disciplines, depending upon how the energy of Sekhmet, if one is used to that idea, if one is familiar with that idea, if one wishes to harmonize with that idea, can apply in their lives in different disciplines. Is this answering your question, or is there something more specific you wanted to discuss about this?
Well, I do have more questions, but that's a very nice start. It's a very good explanation. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, so I've heard you talk about cats, and sometimes you use the phrase the animals that you refer to as cats on your planet. And it made me wonder whether cats or felines or lions exist in other on other planets as well.
Well, certainly in parallel realities that are versions of Earth, they do. But of course, on other planets, there may be certain animals that are similar, but not necessarily identical, because they will adapt to whatever form is representative of what's required for the consciousness of that world. So there may be some similarities in different worlds that you may say, well, that's very cat-like, but they won't necessarily exactly be cats.
Is there a connection between cats and Sirius?
Peripherally, but not directly.
You've also explained about shamans and that they are practiced at changing their frequency to match the frequency of other realities and dimensions.
Some of them
And
are, yes.
so how I've understood that we change our frequencies actually by changing our belief system. So by getting rid of fear-based or irrelevant beliefs, we change
Yes.
our frequency. So how
Yes.
would it work if we want to match our frequency to a specific dimension or location? How do we go about?
Well, this is what your imagination is for. If you can build some kind of a image or feeling about what the idea of another reality represents, and see a version of yourself in that, or something that is representative of what you desire to change into, then all you really have to do is start mirroring what that version of you is doing enough, strongly enough, consistently enough, that you start taking on the qualities of that version of you. And then either quickly or slowly over time, you can start actually exhibiting the qualities of that being and therefore shift yourself to that reality.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Um, and then so another thing you've told us about is the Sphinx, that it actually used to have the form of Anubis
A long time ago, yes.
a long time ago, and that below the Sphinx there's a chamber, and that some of the secrets that have been lost in Atlantis are stored there.
Yes.
So if we would want to access that space or the information that is there, um, what would that require? How would we
Well,
do
first
that?
of all, there are many people in that area who know exactly where that chamber is. They're just not really talking about it. People have asked permission to drill down, to drill a hole under the right paw of the Sphinx, to send a camera through that hole to see what's there, but they have not been allowed to do so at this particular point. So we will leave it up to all of you to figure out how to create a relationship with the people in that area that would be willing to allow that chamber to be explored.
Would there be a possibility of accessing that space by changing our frequency?
Well, of course, you have to change your frequency to experience a difference in reality.
But then, does it require us going there physically?
You don't have to go there physically to be able to know what's there. You can tap into it in a variety of ways. But the idea is that it is important for the revelation of that and exposure of that chamber at a certain timing as well.
Thank you so much, Bashar.
You are welcome. Good day.
Hi, Bashar. I'm Erin from Shepherdstown, West Virginia. I have a question about Willahilla christening the hybrid 700 years in our future. I've encountered a few people who feel some fear about her talking about us being cookies and being eaten eventually when we're fully baked. I was wondering if you could provide some clarity on that statement and maybe help people let go of some fears about that.
As we have discussed, there is an evolution progressing on your planet so that it becomes the sixth hybrid race. In that sense, you are being baked as a species. You are turning into something delicious, not in the literal sense of being eaten, but in the sense of being enjoyed as a beautiful confection, as something you're all familiar with that feels warm and inviting, transforming into something that is considered a lovely dessert. Again, not to be taken literally. So the idea is a euphemism and a euphemistic way of expressing that you're all baking into something beautiful and wonderful.
Hello, Bashar.
Good day, good day.
How are you?
Perfect, and you?
I am doing very well, thank you.
All right.
All right, so my question is, when it comes to things such as parallel timelines,
Yes.
parallel Earths and such, and so there's this version of me experiencing this reality, and there's other versions of me experiencing other realities.
Yes, although they're not literally you.
Oh, could you explain that further?
Well, every version is its own person. They may look like you, and that's why you're saying versions of me, but they're not literally you. They're not this version. They are another person.
Okay, so when are the alternate timelines is there always a split, or is there like when I make a decision there's a split and a split?
The splits don't happen when you make the decisions. The splits are already there. It's just that you shift when you make a decision into that split. And you're doing this constantly, billions of times a second. Remember, what you're calling a single timeline is actually made up of billions of different timelines.
Right, I see. So why do I end up as me experiencing this version of me and the other ones that made the other decisions?
Because the higher version, let's just generally call it the oversoul, that contains all the extensions of all the different versions of you, experiences all those different versions. You happen to be this version that the oversoul decided it would choose to experience, along with all the other versions. You happen to be this version.
I see. And is there any way to say telepathically communicate with other versions of myself?
Yes. And again, you're doing that all the time. You may not recognize it, but you're doing it all the time. A lot of times, some of the experiences and knowledge of other versions in other realities is leaking through and might be giving you different kinds of imagination thoughts and things like that that you think, so to speak, are your own.
I see.
There's constant cross communication going on.
Right. Oh, constant. And how does this transmission is about karma. How does karma factor into that?
Again, only as we've described it. Each and every version gets to decide for itself in its own representation when it is in alignment with whether its true core frequency is, when it is out of alignment, and what actions can be taken to bring itself back into alignment according to the process that this version represents in discovering who and what you really truly are.
Okay, right. That all makes sense. Now, if I may talk about UFOs just for a minute, and the versions that we have here on Earth that were reverse engineered. I'm just wondering if, where are they up to, right? And how long before they become public, if they become public at all?
Some of it may become public within the next couple of decades, maybe 3 decades at the most. But again, bits and pieces of that information do already exist, of course. This is why you're asking the question. But they're not as far along as you might think. They have reverse engineered certain things that do exhibit what you typically refer to as anti-gravity. But they're still experimenting with a lot of it. And not to put too fine a point on it, but a lot of the ships that they've reverse engineered, well, let's just say, without being judgmental, that they're of a more simple design.
Right, I see. And in a previous transmission, a person did ask if the ones being reverse engineered are interdimensional. And I believe you said the people reverse engineering it came into unexpected consequences. I was wondering if you could go into that more deeply. For example,
No,
what
not
unexpected?
Really. Not really. Some of the unexpected consequences are that people got shifted into other dimensions and never came back. Other consequences are they may have shifted through other dimensions to other locations on your planet. Some of them may have been molecularly affected by this. Molecules could have been displaced, gone out of alignment. There can be electromagnetic effects that can be detrimental if it's not done correctly. These are some of the things they have experienced, but we won't go more deeply into it than that.
Okay, that's sort of what I expected the answer to be. Also, next year is 2023.
Yes.
Which I'm looking very forward to, because as you've said many times, that will be the beginning of the window of open contact. Yes. So what I'm thinking is, or what I'm wondering is, when they first make contact, there'll be, I guess, news articles?
Not right away. Not right away. Again, as we have said, just because it's the beginning of the window doesn't mean everything happens all at once. We're just talking about a shift in energy, a shift in vibration in a certain way that allows for the probability of more contact, which will begin in more isolated places on an individual basis, and even just with the idea perhaps of more sightings, more visibly to more people.
Right. So it will slowly start to become commonplace that UFO sightings just an ordinary thing.
Yes, eventually be just like, oh, look, there goes another one.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic news to me, because over the years, for example, in the 1980s, it was often considered crackpots and so on that saw UFOs. So I'm glad that it's becoming more and more common.
All right. Well, that's based on the decisions of those who are shifting to realities where it's already more common.
Oh, that's excellent. I would like to talk about, what we call artificial intelligence, even though it's probably more accurately digital intelligence.
The devices may, in a sense, be artificial, but the intelligence is real.
Right. I see. Could you give us a timeline of when the next big leap in artificial intelligence is or will be, and when it will very definitely pass the Turing test?
10 to 15 years maximum.
Oh, 10 to 15 years maximum.
Yes. Somewhere in there.
What would the, somewhere in there. Oh,
Yes.
what would be like the nearest? So 10 years that the nearest.
It's not impossible that this could be experienced in 5 years. It's just that we see the probability being higher between 10 and 15.
Right, I understand.
As we read your energy now.
Oh, as we read the energy now. So that could increase depending on decisions in society.
Absolutely. These things are always in flux. And as we have said, there's no such thing as a prediction of the future. There is only a sensing of the energy and the most likely probability of manifestation at the moment the reading is taken.
Right, I understand. Okay. Okay, that's all I have for you today. Thank you very much.
You are very welcome. Good day.
Good day.